school admission committees nationwide agree that there are two character traits that they don't like to see. What do you guys think that might be? Say, just kind of put yourself in their position. So you are the admissions committees. What do they not want to see?
They don't want to see somebody boasting about themselves.
Very good. Definitely, arrogance is one of them, for sure. What do you think the second one is? If you're gonna allow someone to come to your med school and participate in your program, what do you not want them to have? This is always the more difficult of the two. It's actually naivety. So being naive about, especially what it means to be a doctor, what's involved in the healthcare community. So in your personal statement as well as your interview, must not appear overconfident, arrogant, unteachable. Really, that's the crux of it all, is unteachable. We had, I believe it was the admissions committee at, well, I think it's in the slides, so I'll just wait. But those are the things you do not want to portray in your personal essay. And I can actually send you guys copies of these slides. If you want, I can send them to the club.
That'd be great.
Distribute them. So,
yeah, that'd be really good.
Yeah. All right, so here's some examples. These are from real personal statements that we see. So, examples of being overconfident. So, my extensive background and indomitable spirit will allow me to make major improvements in the broken healthcare system. So, what's wrong with that? That's right, everything, right? Everything. So, the doctor that's reading this, he's part of that healthcare system, right? That you're saying is broken. And he's had some experience in it. He probably knows that he probably thinks anyway, that as pre-med students, we know nothing about what it would take to fix a broken healthcare system. So, and I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but I'm saying that that's probably his perspective, right? So I'm confident that the unusual difficulty level of my undergraduate coursework will prepare me to excel in medical school. So you guys take some hard classes, there's no doubt about that. But probably from their perspective, saying the unusual difficulty of your undergraduate classes is probably not, it probably sounds a little bit arrogant, a little bit overconfident. I found that I work harder than most students in my science classes, and as a result, the coursework has not been that difficult. So that might even be the case, but it's not necessarily what they want to see. Interestingly enough, what they do like to see is I had a challenge. Like maybe my first year in college, my GPA wasn't very good, and I took the summer, thought about what I wanted to do, decided I was really going to dig in, and from there on, my GPA has never been beneath 3.6 or something like that. They like to see you overcoming a challenge. So examples of being naive: the joy of interacting with patients on a day-to-day basis, along with the exhilaration of saving a human life, draw me to the honor of the medical field. Do you think all your patients are going to be a joy to work with? You're going to get some kid coming in with a fever, snot running down his face, he's bawling, he's just not happy to be there, he doesn't feel good. And not that every time that's going to be the case, but sometimes patients die. That's just the reality of healthcare, that sometimes that's the case, especially, you go into a neurology department or something, there's going to be stroke patients there, things like that. So they want to see that you know what the medical field is really about. And not that it's going to be horrible and gloomy and dark, but just that you have a real handle on it. As a small child, I dreamed of finding a cure for cancer. Some have said it's impossible, but many great accomplishments of the past century never would have happened had we not first believed they were possible. So again, there may be some truth to that, but how long has the medical community been working on a cure for cancer? I mean, probably hundreds of billions of dollars and decades they've put into this, right? And so, yeah, for a pre-med student who's not in med school yet to say, I plan on working on cancer, I'm going to cure cancer, not really very realistic. So you should appear humble, so teachable, easily corrected, open-minded, self-aware, and realistic. So practical, mature, experience. So that's one of the reasons why they like to see you have extracurriculars in the medical field, like volunteering at a hospital, volunteering, you know, at some of these places, like homeless shelters, things like that, where you're going to see kind of some little bit slap in the face, stark realities of the world. They like to see that. So here's some examples of being humble from personal statements. It says, it was not my brightest period of academic glory. However, I learned important lessons about managing my time and developing better study habits. So again, kind of overcoming a challenge. So I wasn't doing great. And do you think they know? Do you think if you tell them, I've never done anything wrong in my whole life, I've never made a mistake, I've been perfect, I always met my curfew when I was a teenager, I've never done anything wrong, do you think they're going to believe that? They're not, right? They know. They have teenage kids or whatever. They know the realities. And so this is very different from a resume, a job resume. Because people on job resumes usually inflate a little bit what they've done, make it sound a little better than it was, kind of sugarcoat things a little bit. I mean, you want to make yourself sound good, but you have to be pretty candid and straightforward. And then examples of being realistic, I learned that even when I give every effort to a cause, there will be times when things simply don't work out. So that's true. And these experiences have exposed me to the realities of healthcare. Sometimes patients are angry without reason. Often there are no easy solutions, and too often patients simply do not get better, even after all we can do. When my little girl she was like 18, no, not even that old, she was barely a year. She just had her top 2 teeth and her bottom 2 teeth. And it was winter time, and we were out shoveling the driveway and just out in the snow playing around. And she slipped on the ice, and she knocked her bottom 2 teeth forward, like her top 2 teeth pushed her bottom 2 teeth. And she was bleeding and screaming, so we took her to the hospital. And she was all calm by that time, but I can definitely say that that was not my best moment. I was not very happy, and I probably wasn't very polite, really, with the doctor. And in fact, once we left the hospital, it's kind of like the pressure just kind of like, I'm like, okay, everything's okay, it's going to be all right. And I was okay, but my time there, it probably was not at my best. And so that's going to happen. That's kind of the realities. So, personal statement, this is not the place for self-promotion, listing of accomplishments. So you can list your accomplishments, but not so much in your essay. You can include these in the 15 activities. Explain why you are the best candidate. This essay should be more about you and your motivation for medicine than about why you're the best. Attempts to sell yourself almost always come off as arrogant. So that's the tricky thing about your essay, is you can't say, I am really humble, or I'm a super hard worker, because you're just kind of self-promoting. So you have to share examples, stories that demonstrate that you are these qualities without coming right out and telling them, right? Because that's easy to say, like, I'm the greatest person in the world. But just because I say it may not make it true. So, in fact, definitely would not make it true. So we need to show them examples of why you are the quality that you're portraying. So how many of you thought one of the above should be in your essay? So self-promoting, listing of accomplishments, explaining why you're the best candidate. Anyone? Yeah, that's the stuff. That's all the stuff that you would think would be in there, right? And do they tell you this? Do they say, okay, when you write an essay, this is what we don't want, and this is what we do want? Right? They don't tell you. And again, you guys are lucky, because, I mean, I'm here to tell you that there are a lot of pre-med advisors at other schools that have no idea what the admissions committees want, or what they want. I mean, there's some big schools, too. And so you guys are really lucky that Dr. Fritzler keeps in contact with the admissions committees, and he's on top of that. So that's great for you guys. So your personal statement is the place to paint a picture of the following: who you are. So this is really, so other than your personal essay, what do they get from you? All they get is numbers, right? They get your GPA, they get your MCAS score, and that's all. So this is where they get to see who you are a little bit and find out a little bit about you. Your sincere motivations for pursuing medicine, and what you have done to seriously test that interest. So they don't want to see, you know, 6 months ago, I saw some kid crash on his bike, and so he had to go get stitches, and I was the only one there, so I took him to the hospital, and I decided right there that I wanted to be a doctor. They want something more in depth, more long term than that, and something that's been tested, like it says. All right, so don't play with fire. So this is the list that admissions committees hate to read. So, dramatic personal or family medical stories. So how many times do you think they hear, my grandmother had cancer, or my mother had cancer and I decided I wanted to be a doctor? Probably all the time, right? And that may completely be true. And you don't have to completely avoid that, but you don't want to state that as your sole cause. I know a guy that his little sister had to have a heart transplant, and that he decided he was going to be a cardiologist. So that was his motivating factor. But they hear dramatic personal or family medical stories all the time. Dr. Samuelson, the former dean of admissions at the University of Utah, said that of all the stories he reads about like personal or family medical stories, I'm trying to remember exactly the statistics now. He said about 10% of them he believes. He said probably 40 more percent are exaggerated, and 50% are probably just outright false. And so, interestingly enough, I heard him speak a while back, and he said that he had heard this, I won't even tell you, but he had heard this one specific story. I can't even remember how many times, like 14 times on personal essays. And it was about some kid, like he was distraught at school, he was carrying all his books home, he was going to go home and commit suicide, and this med school candidate saw him, gave him a ride, something like that. So how many times do you think that really happened of those 14? Probably zero. It's probably something they saw on the internet or heard and decided would sound good in a personal statement. So make sure that it's true and that it sounds, it's believable. So this is another interesting one. I want to help people. How many of you would put that in your personal statement? Yeah, because that's part of it, isn't it? Like, well, probably all of you. That's at least part of the reason why you want to go into medicine. But how they view that is, they view it as trite. So basically not serious, not sincere, not tested. Kind of a shallow statement. And so you can demonstrate that you like to help people, that you've done things to help people. But don't come outright and say, I want to help people. So I love science, I enjoy science, I'm good at science. Again, this is something they see all the time and they view it as trite. I have the solution to insert anything, I like that one. So anything. So you can't say, I have the solution to the broken healthcare system. I have the solution to the insurance gridlock. I have the solution to anything, really. Because these are people who are dealing with the realities of that day in and day out. And they don't really want to hear someone who's not in med school yet tell them that they can solve these problems. Counseling the committee. Like, again, kind of telling them what it should be like. I believe a med school should be whatever. I believe the doctor should have whatever characteristic. Don't counsel them as doctors. This is interesting. Too much passion for something other than medicine. We had a student who, they used to do this. I don't know if they do this anymore down at the University of Utah. In fact, I don't think they do. But if you applied there and got rejected, you used to be able to have a meeting with them, and they would tell you why you got rejected. And so there was a student that he was an EMT or a paramedic or something up on the slopes of the ski resort, and he wrote his personal essay, and you could feel his passion for being an EMT just ooze out of that personal statement. Like, oh, I love being up in the mountains on the snow shining off the sun's not shining off the new fallen snow, and I'm gliding down the slopes, things like that. And then he said, and also, I want to be a doctor and I love medicine. And so, in fact, it was Dr. Samuelson who told him, he said, we really felt like we would be doing you a disservice to allow you into medical school, because it was obvious how much you loved being an EMT on the ski resort, and we felt like we'd be tearing you away from something you love to let you into medical school. So there's another girl that was a very serious musician. She played the violin, and again, you could just feel her passion for the violin, and it just overshadowed her her feelings towards medicine. So don't have too much passion, or at least portray too much passion for something other than medicine. Assuming the sale. So this is statements like, when I'm in medical school, I will whatever. Don't assume they're going to think, well, isn't this my medical school? Don't I decide if you get to come? So don't assume the sale. Making excuses. Yeah. So don't bring up, like if you got a bad grade in first half of OCAM, or if you had to retake it or something, don't mention that. Chances are, if they even do see it, it'll be forgotten. They'll kind of skim over that. You don't want to bring that up in your personal statement. Because they look at so many of the grades and all that, they might notice it, they might not. They may not think that much about it. It's probably, fairly common to see somebody get a lower than normal grade in OCAM. So don't make excuses. It just doesn't look good. And it just brings out whatever the negative thing is. So, if any of you guys have kids, you don't want to hear that. If your kid does something wrong, you don't want to tell them, well, they were doing this and I did this, and like, don't tell me that. I just want you to accept responsibility, and that's good. So, and then quotations. So don't, people quote Abraham Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson or things like that. So if Abraham Lincoln or Thomas Jefferson was applying to med school, they would be interested in that. But since you're applying to med school, they don't want to hear quotes from somebody else. Okay? All right, things admission committees love to read. So be sure to include several of these. So again, kind of a change of heart. So I used to think this, but I came to realize this. So I used to think healthcare was all sunshine and roses, but came to realize that these are people involved and families and stark realities. And so it shows that you're teachable. Again, I made this mistake, and this is how I overcame it. So whether it's an academic thing, whether it's whatever it is, really, if there's some challenge or obstacle in your life that you've had to dig in deep and overcome, they like to see things like that. So these experiences reaffirmed my growing interest. So again, it's not one thing, like I saw this episode of MASH where he gave this guy a tracheotomy and saved his life and everything. It's substantive things and a mature knowledge and desire to be in the healthcare field. So it reaffirmed my growing interest, not like all of a sudden I had this interest. This experience taught me. So again, being teachable, open-minded. I don't know. So interesting, how many of you would put that? I don't know something in your personal essay. I would avoid that like the plague without knowing this, but that they like to see that. Because they know that you don't know everything. They know that you're not perfect. And so they like to see that you're being candid with them and that you'll share a weakness or mistake. So experience with the negative aspects of medicine. We've talked about that a little bit. Sure.
So I've heard that you don't want to give like your whole self though within the essay though, because then why bring you in for an interview, because they have everything in the essay. Like you still have to keep. So do you have any tips to like make sure you're not like you're kind of baiting them in, I guess? Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe. As far as giving your whole self, like explain a little bit more what you mean.
Like if you're explaining like why you wanted to become a PA or a doctor.
Yeah.
Like you still want them to be curious enough to bring you in to meet you,
right?
But at the same time, you don't want to be like, oh well, this is my experiments. That's the story
Right.
again.
It's all there, all up front. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I've never.
Have you ever heard that? I guess.
I haven't. No, I've never heard them address that specifically. So, yeah, I can't really. That might be something that you might want to talk to Dr. Chrysler about. He may have spoken with them about that. I've never heard them specifically address that.
Okay.
So, yeah, sorry.
You're good.
All right. So again, just the attitude. So I am fortunate enough to be accepted. So not like I crushed everyone else in my class and I got whatever award. Like if you got a scholarship or something like that, like you can tell them, I worked hard. I skipped some weekends with my friends or some parties, and I was fortunate enough to have gained this honor, gained this scholarship, been accepted into whatever it is. So just an attitude of humility. They love that. That's gold. So I expect this to be extremely difficult. So med school's tough, and you got to work hard. There's just no doubt about that. And so to let them know, I expect this to be extremely difficult. Not, I've done well in my science classes, and so I'm probably going to breeze through med school. No, they don't necessarily want to hear that. They want to hear, I expect this to be challenging. I know that I'm going to have to work hard. I'm going to have to spend some late nights, things like that. Just honest, candid, personal confessions and realizations. Sure.
How long should a personal statement be?
Yeah. You know, I'll give you some samples here. It doesn't have to be really all that long. These are just about a page. So that's probably a typical one. So all of these are about 1 page.
I've heard a page, but if you are going to go into 2 pages, make sure it goes halfway through the page.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, everyone else has just said 1 page only.
So that doesn't look like you're just trying to get to 2 pages.
Trying to stretch it out.
Yeah, so definitely 1 full page, but if you are going to go over it, make sure it's at least half a page, so
Right.
it's not.
It's not just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably.
But everyone's told me 1 page.
Yeah. So honest, candid, personal confessions and realizations. Again, things maybe you changed your mind or changed your viewpoint on things. And then very personal statements. So letting them know really who you are, what drives you, the things that you love. So here's some quotes from some of the deans of admissions. So this is Dr. Samuelson from the University of Utah. We're looking for people who we would like to work with as colleagues. That's probably who you guys would accept, right? If you were making the choice, you'd accept somebody you wanted to work with, not somebody you couldn't stand. All right, so the personal statement should be personal and give us real insight into the applicant's personality. Dr. Charles Prober at Stanford, we do not accept applicants based solely upon their statistics. So that's interesting. It says we look for students who can demonstrate substantive character growth through their chosen extracurricular activities. So where are they going to see that? All they have from you is statistics, except for personal statement, right? So that's the one place where you're going to be able to demonstrate that character growth. So, step-by-step instructions, we can quickly go through this. So, develop a theme. So, it's interesting, you really do want it to kind of be a story. It's not so much, I don't know, I think essay is not the greatest word for it. I really think it's more of a story, more of a, I don't know, you guys will get a feel for it when I pass these out and we can read some of these. But you'll be surprised at how much it's not just a report on things that you've done. All right, choose 1 or 2 events or experiences that shaped you. You don't want to put too many in, but choose 1 or 2 and then expound and have it something substantive and with some depth. Answer the question, why did you choose medicine? So brainstorm 2 or 3 specific examples that show you are humble or teachable. So again, you can't tell them, I'm really humble and I'm really teachable. So you have to show them, demonstrate these characteristics to them. Brainstorm 2 or 3 specific examples that show that you are mature or self-aware. Yeah, just think of examples from your own life that will demonstrate this, demonstrate some maturity or being self-aware. So, what's the opposite of being self-aware? Yeah, it's going to be oblivious, like unaware of what's going on around you or other people or things like that. So yeah, they want to know that you're not oblivious. Choose 1 to 2 specific examples that show you're realistic about medicine. Insert 1 to 2 fun or interesting personal details, hobbies, interests, faults. Double and triple check the top 10 things admission committees hate to read list. Proofread your essay, spell check, then have friends and family read it, edit it. Show your final draft to a writing expert, a pre-med advisor, and you guys are really lucky with that because you got a good one, and a doctor. So the writing expert, we're talking about somebody that writes for a magazine, writes for a newspaper. They're usually pretty flattered and pretty open if you say, hey, listen, I read your column in the newspaper, I enjoy reading it, and would you mind reading just my 1 page page essay and just help you with the wording, help it flow. Because these guys are good. I mean, you guys know, if you read something out of a magazine, you know how it just flows and the words are colorful and kind of comes to life, and it's like it gives you pictures in your mind, and it just really has a life of its own, as opposed to a report where you have a pile of data, right? And so that's what you want. You want it to be a story. You want it to pop and come alive. So the writing lab at school, not probably the best place for this. It's okay. They can help you with the punctuation, maybe help you with some word choices, but you really want to have a real professional writer go over your essay. So send your essay to Altius for review, and so everybody that joins the Altius program will can get their personal essay reviewed. If they submit it to us, we'll review their personal essay. And that's, again, that's over a $2,500 value to have the admissions package. So make final revisions and submit. All right. Okay. So how much of a difference do you think your personal essay makes in your application? Do you think it carries some weight? It really does, right? So with the, I'm not 100% sure, honestly, if it's these